Hello and welcome to another episode of Construction Corner Podcast. I'm Dylan. I'm your host, joined by my blue collar badass, Matt. How's it going, man?
Going great, Dylan. Glad we could make time today to do this. Not our normal day, but such is life. You gotta get in where you fit in. So I'm actually here at HQ2 in the new studio, still trying to figure out all this fancy shit that I bought, but we're getting close to the point of being able to release it all.
Yeah, man, I get it. It takes so much time to set all this stuff up and dial it in and figure it out, especially if it's not like fully permanent, it takes a lot of effort to get it right.
Yes, and it's pretty much plug and play, but it's plug and play, and then you still got to figure out how to use it. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's an art, that's for sure.
yeah, man, but it'll be a good thing. It's pretty neat, some of the stuff I got. I haven't even shown you all of it. So once I figure it all out and get it dialed in, we'll do a little tutorial day.
You got to show them how it's done. That's right.
It'll be cool though, man. We'll be able to take live callers now. Like I mentioned, we can link phones to it. We can link obviously Zoom to it. There's a whole bunch of different stuff you can do. So stay tuned, everybody. It's about to get real here.
Yeah, you'll have a radio show next, right?
Yeah. Yeah, in my spare time.
Uh well, guys, so last week you heard about the ROP course and the rite of passage course, doing 24 hours and really making every minute count. And with that, today we're a little bit shorter on time, so I want to make every minute count here as well. So we're going to revisit the LACASA project that we talked about a few episodes ago on really the ability, effort, and just bringing a project together of True Design-Build and what that really means. We talked about it in the LACASA project and having, tight timelines, and we've alluded to a lot of things over the last 2 years in the process of that whole thing. So, Matt, if you want to walk through some of this, from steel to HVAC units to electrical gear to really the things that make True Design-Build what it is, and maybe some of the pitfalls of where others fall short in trying to execute a True Design-Build project.
Yeah, man. So it was like we said last time. It was a really cool project. A lot of stuff went really well in our favor, and there was definitely some things that we can learn from and improve on next time. AKA that we really screwed up and shit the bed on. Um, as far as the whole design process, I mean the whole core tenet of it, right, is forming a team very early on. And for that project in particular, we had, the MEP guys are kind of shoe-ins for design build. That they're always there. On this one though, in particular, we also brought in our steel contractor. We brought in our carpenter. We brought in earthworker and our landscaper on this one also. And so we really kind of stretched our wings farther than we had ever done before. And there was good reason and intent behind that, and it ended up working. So I don't remember where we left it off last time, but we had an opportunity with our earthworker in particular to save some significant dollars for the client, for the owner, who again, this is a nonprofit group. Every dollar counts immensely. And we were able to save almost $250,000 by selecting the certain contractor we did, helping or having them help us with design, and then we started the whole project early. So you and I have talked about it off mic, I know, but we started earthwork on that project um, in November of 21. So long ass time ago, knowing that we weren't going to have steel until I think we got our steel in May or June, maybe even July of 22. And that was all by design. It allowed us to, like I said, first and foremost, significant savings were recognized. But we got our guys working. They worked right through winter, and that was a brutal winter around here, anyways. They took a week here, a week there for holidays, and then there was really only a handful of days when it was just so brutal cold, or there was so much snow that they physically couldn't safely work. But they went, other than those, straight through the winter, and it allowed us to come out of the ground way faster than we would have been. So then into 22, we were digging foundations in March, April timeframe. So it helps speed up the timeline, which is another huge benefit, of design build, and that you're not waiting by the same constraints that you have in a design bid build project. Um, it was a weird. The last 3 years have been pretty damn weird, right? But this was like at the height of the weirdness, and you couldn't get steel, you couldn't get rooftop units, you couldn't get switch gear, which you still can't. Um, just a whole lot of weird stuff going on, and we really had to try and kind of manipulate and change how we typically approach projects. So, like I mentioned, I think last time we ordered the steel, I don't know, way earlier than I was even comfortable with, but we had to do it. We didn't have final approvals, we didn't have final design, and we slotted a multi-million dollar steel order way in advance just so that we would have a chance of being able to hit our deadlines. And that's kind of the reality of what we were dealing with in this industry for the last 3+ years now. um, HVAC units we ordered very early also, and our job site looked like a storage yard. We had Connex boxes all over the place, and they was just full to the brim of everything. And we when typically when we write subcontracts, depending on the trade and the timelines, guys won't order anything, or won't order everything rather, right away. On this project, and because of everything going on in the market, we told everybody, order your shit on day one. As soon as we write you a PO, like, get it ordered. And so some of the stuff still took, over a year and a half to get there. Some of the stuff got there pretty quick. And so we just had shipping containers just full to the brim. Our plumbers, for example, had all of their fixtures for the job before we had our foundations dug. They were all on site. But all of those things kind of combined, and allowed us to have a certain latitude of freedom, and a way to really bring it to fruition, and not be just completely killed by the market and by scheduling.
Yeah, there's two big things in there that I want to really hit on. One is, it's not often that you see dirt work being done in winter, um, and that being pushed and moved. And that's a really one, I'm sure, was a win for them, right? And, having a contract that allows them to work through the winter, because usually those guys, take a season off. So I'm sure that was a big win. And let's address that one first.
Yeah, man. I mean, especially around here, in Southeast Michigan, we can have brutally cold winters are normal. We don't always get a ton of snow, but it gets so damn cold that, machines don't like to run. And so it's not atypical in, late fall, early winter around here to go on to I-75, and you'll see big equipment running up north all day long. And it's guys going to hide it and trying to avoid the tax man. And they park them up north, out in the woods on their lots, and bring them back then in the spring when construction starts. So to your point, yeah, we were, I mean, that was part of how we were able to cut such a great deal with these guys, is they booked out their entire winter, which is very rare. And they kept their guys, their full crew working. And it's a big outfit, or they've kind of faded out now after that project. They've taken a different direction. But at the time, he had 20 some guys on staff, and a ton of iron. And, for those guys, we've talked to a few different earth workers on the show here. I mean, those guys are out millions and millions of dollars on equipment. And the most expensive piece of equipment ever is the one that's sitting, not moving. So to allow them to kind of keep guaranteed work flowing through the winter months, it was a huge win-win for everybody involved.
Yeah. And I mean, again, it's just something you don't see very often, but again, great on you for being able to secure them and have that. And then the next thing is really even talking about like how plumbing fixtures were there, before foundations were laid, even though that's unusual for a project. I'm sure it gave you, the owner, everybody involved, a great level of security moving forward through that project. So even though you had these storage fees accruing, well, not really, because it's, just a Connex box. But even though you had everything in storage for it, they had to outlay some capital early. Again, it created a security in the schedule of the project that, for some, I'm sure we're up in the air, right? They couldn't get their COs if they don't have, a toilet or a, sink fixture or something else, that they're just waiting on to finalize the building.
Yeah, man. I mean, we got to remember the time frame that we're talking about here. This was just coming out of the bullshit COVID shutdown. So there were steel lead times that were 13 months, 14 months to get it. And we're not building skyscrapers, right? It's not like a massive amount of steel that we need on a normal job. So to be able to have everything there and sit and waiting was a huge benefit, a huge relief. But on the flip side, it also provided a whole lot of extra risk and a whole lot of sleepless nights because, yeah, we got insurance, but everything is literally sitting out on the job site and it's in a fairly remote ish area. And they're in, corrugated metal boxes. So, um, knock on wood, we only had one issue the entire project, one major issue. And we're not, this isn't a good area, it's not downtown Detroit. That would have been a whole different ball game. We had somebody come onto the site overnight. It was during the summertime, so last summer, and they went. It was real weird. They went past all of the Connex boxes that were full, and fast forward to the end, the person who did it was random. They didn't work for any of our guys, which is good, but they also didn't know what was in these boxes. So they drove right past them, and they went around back to a construction trailer of our carpenters, and they cut through the doors of that and went Christmas shopping. And they took a ton of tools and all sorts of stuff out of there, but they left everything else alone, which was always, it still boggles my mind. Like, I don't know, we had 10 boxes on that site at any given time, and you don't know if they're full of tools or full of toilets. So, but to your point, I mean, the ability to do that, it really, it put my mind at ease as the owner that, okay, contractually we're going to meet our schedule, and then I can go back in front of the owners, the project owners, and with a straight face say, yeah, we're still on schedule, we're still going to deliver this building when we said we would. So that was a huge benefit.
Yeah, man. All right, next. What else really helped to bring this together? And being able to do slot steel early, that's huge. Again, we would do traditionally the way we would approach that is doing like an early site and steel package to release everybody early on that side of it so that the pad can be cleared, ground can be leveled, steel can be ordered at least, and in traditional uh, lead times, that steel would go as soon as the ground's cleared. You can start doing footings and pour pad and all that, and then you're shortly after you'd be able to start erecting steel. Um, so that went really well. Ordering, other units and gear and fixtures and all that kind of stuff went well. What else out of this whole process, really made it a success for you guys?
Well, I want to touch back on the steel thing
Mm,
too, because bringing our steel guy into the mix that early was such a huge benefit in lots of ways. Yes, we were able to order everything earlier. We worked out, you know, deals with him and with his suppliers, and had this all thing orchestrated and figured out. But having this guy involved in the design process literally saved the project a couple times. So a
mm,
great example, steel bar joists went like out of stock across the country for almost 2 years, and you couldn't get them. And so at the 0 hour on design, when we're about to order our steel, my steel guy came to me and he's like, Matt, this is a major problem. It doesn't do us any good if we get all the beams and all the columns, but we can't put the damn roof on. So, and this happened to us at a previous project a year before, where we literally couldn't get the roof on, and it killed us. It was a miserable project. But anyways, at the very last minute, he came to me and said, "What if we scrap joists, open bar joists all together, and we do this thing with 100% beams?" And I kind of looked at him. I'm like, "Man, you're insane. Like there's no money in the budget for this. And tell you what, we have the best steel guy in the business, and I won't use his name because I don't want anyone else to call him. I want him available for us forever. But he redesigned the entire roof structure so it was 100% beams, no joist or no open bar joist at all. So the thing is built like a tank facility, right? I mean, you could drive a tank on the roof, but he was able to do it with spans and with weights and loading that it really didn't affect the budget whatsoever. And we got all of it when we needed it. So bringing in, the steel trade is one that's not typically thought of in design build, at least where we're at. But bringing him in and putting him in at the table with our team, it took some convincing because it's also it was the single largest line item on our schedule of values, right? And it usually is. So that takes convincing to try and show an owner, listen, we're going to break the mold completely and single source the biggest single line item on this contract. But trust me in that it's going to be such a benefit to you and your project that it'll outweigh any of this uneasiness. And after we convinced him of that, obviously now in hindsight, it worked out just perfectly. So I would just say that, for anyone kind of dabbling or even thinking about getting into true design build construction, don't don't be limited by the box. Like sometimes you can get creative and you can make your own damn rules. And it doesn't always work that way, but in this case anyways, it worked out really, really well for us.
Well, and I think that's just it, right? Like every single trade can be brought to the table in any way, shape, or form that they need to under a true design build context, right? And people, I mean, the engineering disciplines, right, MEP, are pretty straightforward in that and being brought to the table, just for all the systems that go inside the building. And then you start to go to, design build and framing and wall contractors, right? If they're running a prefab shop, then you could start to go to steel on that too. If there's any pieces on that, usually, I mean, steel again traditionally is all still erected on site. I don't think there's getting around that for how big of stuff they have. But to bring in the steel contractor, combined with your structural engineer and being able to come up with creative solutions like that for supply chain issues that you're not going to get around, right? Like bar joists just not being available. The only thing you have is a redesign of it. And then to work with somebody that knows what is available, and then to cost it appropriately so that it doesn't completely break the budget or at all, in this case. So I think that's, and then all the way down to carpentry and, getting everything redone or whatever they could do outside of, on-site work, again, prefabbing as much as they could to bring it in, set it, they're involved in the project. They know where time can be shaved off the project, right? But not corner cutting, but time being shaved to still meet schedule and deadline with keeping quality up.
Yeah, and it's about everything we talk about in the show, right? It's relationships, and there's no way in hell I would have had the trust or the lack of anxiety about ordering a multi-million-dollar steel package ahead of design being done if I didn't truly know, like, and trust this guy, right? You don't spam somebody on LinkedIn and then next day they're ordering a $2 million steel package from you on a hope and pray that it's going to work when the shit gets there. These are relationships that are built over years and years and years. And it a lot of people think it's not fair because it's very hard to get inside the doors. It's very hard to get on our team, but that's why. Like when the shit comes down and we have to make drastic decisions, because we didn't do this. I mean, that project could have been delayed a year, 2 years, and by all right, it probably would have been canceled at some point. So I mean, these are life or death decisions in our world, and we're making them every day. And to make those sort of decisions at that level of risk, with that level of commitment, with guys that you don't really have a good relationship with, it could be career suicide. So it's this industry is unique in that aspect, I guess, in that it is hard to get into these walls, but once you do, like I just said, I don't want my steel guy going anywhere.
Well, I mean, it's like I've talked about before on this show as well, is this is why you go work straight out of college for the big firms, for the big boys, and or in a mid-sized firm where you can get a lot of responsibility fairly quickly so that you're able to, whenever you decide, or if you decide to go and start your own thing, that you have a lot of these connections kind of built in to where, it's not as hard to, you've got your subcontractors lined up, who to talk to, they trust you, you trust them, you can procure all this type of stuff, right? Distribution, or at least who to talk to within the distribution channels. So going and working for these other companies and firms is a is really a good thing. Like, you're not gonna, it's much harder to start out of the gate doing your own thing, um just because you don't know anybody. Like, it is that much harder in construction to do it. Now, if you're running like a residential business or something like that, it's a lot easier to do from the ground up, and fresh and young and all that, because you're just dealing with a homeowner, right? You're maybe doing an expansion of their home, a little addition, you're doing a, accessory dwelling unit or something like that. But when we talk commercial stuff, and you're into multi-million, $100 million, $1 billion contracts, like, you just don't have the juice to bring in the people that are needed to run those projects. Plus, you don't have the experience to know those projects, contract those projects, bond those projects, like all the other ancillary stuff besides just actually building it. And you probably don't have that skill either. How much steel's needed, how much concrete's needed, what a pour of that magnitude looks like for those projects. Like, this is where continuous concrete pours set records, in these $1 billion, $100 million projects, to where they're pouring for 24 continuous hours of concrete, like, it just becomes insane at the scale and magnitude that if you don't have that type of experience, there's no way you're going to get it starting on your own. Go and work in these firms for a while. I mean, in engineering, it's pretty much required. If you want to be licensed, you need your recommendations and all that kind of stuff. So you're pretty much required to go work in a firm. And then I just heavily recommend it on the contractor side. But I mean, I love your take on that too, Matt.
Um, so I do recommend it. I think it is extremely valuable. It is not what I did. And I can tell you that I have taken a lot of bumps and bruises and bloodied knuckles that probably could have been avoided had I gone that route that you're mentioning. When I was doing my consulting gig and I was building all over the country, there was no relationship, anything, right? It was walk into a new city that I've never been before. I need to find a team of specialty contractors to build this restaurant in as quickly and as cheaply as possible. And you're starting from zero every single project. There's, maybe on the very rare case you'd build in the same geographic area and you could pull some of the same trades guys in, but usually it was not that. And so, I mean, it forced me to learn, obviously, real fast, but it was really difficult. And then, when I stopped doing that because of the travel reasons, it got to be too much. That's when I took the job with that other company, and they weren't a huge company by any means, but that was kind of my late stage, um, teaming up with the big guys, just for the experience, just to get some of those older seated relationships, kind of grab onto them, and then you kind of work your magic that way. So I wholeheartedly would agree with you that it doesn't have to be the big guys necessarily, but get out there and team up with whomever you can, and get that experience, because that's where those relationships form, and you have the benefit of utilizing others' relationship work that's already been put into that bank, right? They've already put the capital in and done that. It's a lot easier for you then to step in and kind of become another relationship for that same person, if that makes any sense.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's the things you're going to get from these firms and that experience is the relationships, absolutely, and your own kind of twist and flavor to it. The second thing is you're going to get process procedures, how to do things, right, that clearly work, or otherwise the firm wouldn't be in business. And then, and especially on like really on both engineering and construction side, engineering takes a few years to feel any fallout of it. Construction's I would say the timeline is a little closer than like an engineering, just because we don't have on the engineering side, we have an additional 6 months a year of delay of like, oh, that was not the right decision.
Right.
Versus in construction, you pretty much see it almost immediately, like however long it takes to get to that point in the project to see whether this works or not. But again, firms that have been around for a long time usually have pretty good processes, procedures, how to do things. A lot of stuff's outlined. And then the only thing that I would say out of that is to understand that how these firms do it isn't always the 100% right way. It's just they've not failed them, right? And so it's tried and true. It works. Uh, but don't let that close off your mind to other alternatives or other ways of doing things, even though it's tried and true. So that's my only like quote caveat to that. And you're going and doing your own thing. If you stay in you become a lifer or continue to work at that firm for a long time, again, don't don't completely close your mind, but you can stick to the tried and true of, you're not going to sink the ship in the way that things are being done.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. I mean, there's a certain amount of latitude you got to have, but if it's not broke, you don't always have to fix it.
And for some of the young guys, I think, I know I was that way of, let's fix it even though it's not broke kind of attitude. And that doesn't always go over so well. Um, with that, any last thoughts for this episode, Matt?
No, I would just I like this doing these topics. I think it's good to dig into the design build world a little bit more than we have. So looking forward to keeping that up. But guys, check out the YouTube channel. It is growing. There are videos dropping. There's shorts being posted. All that fancy shit that I don't really understand, but it's out there. So check it out and share the show.
Awesome. Yeah, guys, go check us out on YouTube. Just the Construction Corner podcast. You can find us there. And without further ado, that's going to be this episode of the Construction Corner podcast. Until next time.